What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about why I might get Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster. You guys wanted more videos where I didn't just say that I'm outright buying games. So you got Lollipop Chainsaw, you got a thing like Space Marine, and you get a thing like Dead Rising. I will say, Dead Rising is the first time really I've done this in the modern age of, this is very much a in consideration type thing, okay? For Lollipop Chainsaw, it's like I'm gonna get it just when and kind of how. Space Marine, it's almost also just like a when situation. Dead Rising, I just don't know. So I kind of want to walk you guys through it in this video. And hey, look, if you're into Dead Rising, I'm very, very glad. I hope you have a blast with this game day one. It's really nothing against it. It goes back to my central thing that I've said a few times ever since this game was announced. I've never been a Dead Rising fan. I don't really know why. I gave it a chance. I did back in my renting days. Like, I rented at least Dead Rising 1 and 2. And just like the play style, the story, just like the way it was put together, I guess, just did not jive with me. But I gotta be, I played the game like a decade plus ago, right? Like when it first came out. It's been a very, very long time. I know kind of like the history of what happened to the series and whatnot, but I haven't played it in forever. And so granted, this is a good opportunity for somebody like me to give the game a second chance. Forget playing maybe this could still happen, right? But forget playing the original game to maybe give it a second chance, right? Why not do a modern awakening of this franchise? Now, from what people have played and talked about, like already in like the previews, it kind of seems split, right? Like you have them changing some stuff, and then you have the split to that, right? But I do think the game looks like fun. I believe that Dead Rising 1 is oftentimes considered to be the best Dead Rising game, and I mean maybe 2, I've seen some talk of 2, maybe even 3, but it generally, I think, with the fan base, kind of gets worse as the games go. Frank West, kind of an iconic character for the franchise, like it does have, and I think it's going to do quite well. Okay, I actually have talked about that in the past. Like, this is the perfect time for Capcom to do something like this. I think you can have a lot of success with this, and I think you could spin this into a brand new Dead Rising game. And honestly, with the way that Capcom is just on a freaking roll, right? Now's the time to bring back Mega Man, to do a Dino Crisis remake, to do more like original Dead Rising games. They're firing in all cylinders. Like, you want this era of Capcom to do it. You don't want to wait for them to kind of like fall apart and then they do it. You wouldn't want Capcom of like the RE6 kind of era. You wouldn't want them. Actually, that's, I think, Dead Rising 4's kind of time, right? You wouldn't want that era of Capcom to do it. So all things considered, this is the best time, I think, to do something like this. It's priced pretty fairly. I think it's $49.99. It's, it's another one of like the September discounts, right? And another reason why I would say like I might get it, or maybe I would even get this game eventually. This really starts kind of almost wave 2 of like there's just so many games in September. I only have so much money, and you also have to get into October. So honestly, and I don't want to make the whole video just this, right? It's kind of why I waited a little bit. But where it releases and things like that, that does impact. It impacts me. I'm sure it impacts many people, right? You have a couple games coming out like a week or two apart. You literally have to make decisions, and so I'm making a decision right now, right? Like, I'm going hard in the end of August / beginning of September, right? The Astrobots of the world, the casting of Frank Stone, Star Wars or Black Myth I have, at least at the time I'm recording this, right? It's a little bit earlier, but, there is a lot of games end of August, beginning of September. Then there's kind of wave 2, which is like Space Marine, Lollipop Chainsaw, Dead Rising, and like Epic Mickey. And a lot of those games are remakes or remasters, right? 3 of those 4 are actually that. So, it's almost like a pick of like, I actually really liked Epic Mickey originally on the Wii, so it's like, I might get that one. Lollipop Chainsaw, we talked about in a video on its own. Like, Dead Rising, just because of the origin that I wasn't necessarily a fan, it kind of gets pushed down. But it is a game, I think, it's a game I want 2 things, right? It's a game that I do want to give a chance to, and I think this is probably the best way to give it a chance, right? Because it's got some of those quality of life things with even say like how time works and the visuals and keeping enough of the, I mean, there are some changes, again, specifically even with like voice actors and whatnot, right? But they are keeping a lot of what made the original special and different, and they're just, they're putting it into here right now. I wouldn't say they're going like all the way with like a Metal Gear Solid 3 type situation, right? But they're also not reinventing the wheel or like reimagining, say, like Final Fantasy 7. So it's kind of a hybrid. It's not necessarily a remaster, right? Because some things about it are more remake-like, but it's also not a full remake because some things about it are more of a remaster, hence the title. I saw a lot of people out there that don't really like the title of Deluxe. It does sound kind of strange. Like, it sounds like, I guess it sounds like a selling point type thing, right? Where it's like, oh, this is so deluxe. And I don't know, I actually get why people don't necessarily like that name. But, I think it's going to be a solid time. I think people are going to enjoy it. For me, this is where I would want to jump into the franchise. Like, I would play this over replaying the first game, and I would play this over trying out 2 through 4, right? Because I don't think I've ever played 3 or 4, and I might not have ever played 2, to be honest with you, right? But I do think this is where I would start. It's just, I'm not too much of a fan. Nothing about it has ever super caught me. And maybe I'm missing something. That's why I like to make these videos, because you guys can kind of, tell me in the comments your stories. Why are you getting it? Why aren't you getting it? Like, you can tell me your side of things. And sometimes it wins me over, you know what I mean? So I definitely want to hear from you. But, and it's also, I got to be honest, like, it's also the time period. It's in a rough it's kind of the aftermath, because this is one of the later September games. And a lot of the games I mentioned that I'm getting are in the beginning. But it's like, I'm spending so much money, and there's going to be so many of these games that are maybe even backlogged. It's like throughout September, I'm going to be playing those, right? To add Dead Rising to it would be tough. And then October has, another like 5 to 7 games that I really want. So it's in a tough spot. And I guess the last thing, it is the same as Lollipop Chainsaw, which we talked about in that video, where they are again splitting up the physical with the digital. And Dead Rising was never the kind of, it was a bigger hit than, say, okay, absolutely, right, than Lollipop Chainsaw. But Lollipop Chainsaw developed this status, and also like being trapped on past console, where it was very important to get kind of the physical, and the physical prices rose and stuff. So I'm not saying these are the same things in terms of like that kind of value or that kind of market, but this is a situation with Lollipop Chainsaw. Lollipop is 3 months difference between digital and physical, at least depending on where you get it, say limited run. Lollipop Chainsaw is September, but if you get it physically through limited run, it's December. Now, Dead Rising is actually the same, but a little bit less. It's September, but then it's November if you get it physically. So if you want it physically and you want kind of that game preservation aside, especially because it's a remaster of an older game that, maybe you want to have it physically, you got to wait 2 months after the game has already released to get it physically. And that never goes over well with me. I complained about in the Lollipop Chainsaw video. Not a fan of that. So then I kind of have to debate, well, maybe I will get it. But if I get it, well, should I get physical? And if I get physical, well, I'm going to be waiting till November anyway. So why, I'm not going to get in September. I'll just wait a couple months, right? So these games, specifically Dead Rising, Lollipop, and maybe a few others, they're like that, where it's like, if I don't get it right away, might as well wait a couple months, because maybe I just want it physically at that point. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.